Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to Ramadan FM, Breaking Stereotypes with your host, Zainab Zaeem. As always, I like to do a little bit of housekeeping. So first off, we're going to start off by thanking the team at Ramadan FM, without whom the show would not be possible. Ramadan FM itself would not be possible. So thank you to everyone there. Also want to thank my guests for coming on to the show, taking time out of their valuable evenings to discuss all things personal to them. And I'd also like to thank my listeners and viewers, without whom the show would also not be possible. So without further ado, the show is interactive. Hopefully you've tuned in either by Ramadan.fm or FM 87.7, DAB 9B, or through Facebook and YouTube. The show is interactive, so do telephone in if you have any questions or message in. Studio line is 0116 4822 and to either send a text message or a WhatsApp, it's 077 488 55055. Okay, without further ado, for tonight's evening show, we have Salma Maqsood. Assalamu alaikum, Salma.
Walaikum assalam, Zainab, and Ramadan Mubarak to you. Thank you so much for having me, or asking me to be a guest on this show, and thank you also to Ramadan Radio as well for this opportunity.
You're most welcome. It's our honour, and Khair Mubarak to you as well. So, for the purposes of our listeners and viewers, are you able to give a introduction as to who you are and what it is that you currently do, please?
Absolutely. I wear a lot of different hats, so I'm just going to run through them all very quickly. Currently, I am Vice President of Bristol Law Society, and I'm really enjoying this role a lot, just helping out the legal profession in Bristol with a real focus on trying to collaborate with different law firms and diversify the profession. I'm also a social mobility ambassador for the National Law Society, and I've been a social mobility ambassador for a few years now, and I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk about that role a little bit more in the show. I also represent Bristol at the National Law Society as well, representing the lawyers and those in the legal profession in Bristol, and sharing their views and inputting into strategy, etc. at the National Law Society. I have a few various other roles as well on a local level, but my real full-time job is as a lawyer, as a partner, in fact, at Thring Solicitors in the development of land team.
MashaAllah, so a lot of accomplishments there. Alhamdulillah, it's really nice to see Muslim female, especially from the BAME sector, moving up in what is very much a male-dominated industry. And it still is, even though there's a huge percentage of us women who do work in law, it is still very much male-dominated. Now, what I do just want to say to the listeners and viewers, the show is not focused on the law in itself. The show is focused about all the challenges that Salma has had to endure, face, what she's overcome to get to the position that she's at. So, Salma, let's take it all the way back, almost to the beginning, shall we say. When you were growing up, what was it that you first wanted to be?
It's a really interesting question. So I think when I was young, my mom used to talk. My mom spent a lot of time actually teaching us about Pakistan and teaching us, me and my siblings, how to read and write Urdu and about history. And she introduced us to Quaid-e-Azam, him being the founder of Pakistan. He was a barrister. And I think just from there, I was immediately just kind of hooked. I just thought he was, clearly a hero, a role model. I also wanted to go into the law because if people could go into the law and achieve what he had achieved, I felt that was the way to go. That was the way to protect my family. That was the way to look after my community. That was the way to support those around me and to, succeed in life, I guess. We grew up, I grew up in Bristol. I was born and bred in Bristol, and back then Bristol was, a very people from ethnic minorities, there was not many of us around.
Barely any,
So
I
there
can
was,
imagine, yeah.
I'm sure everybody, probably most of your listeners will know what it's like growing up in that kind of environment. So I think I was immediately just hooked on the law from there. I used to read a lot of books, really interested again in history and just reading and just learning. And now that I'm listening to myself speak, I'm like, God, I was a right nerd back then.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a nerd. I say this to my daughter
So
all the time. I mean, she's 16, and there is that stigma attached, isn't there? The stereotype that being a nerd, you tend to get bullied and picked on, but actually, nothing wrong with being a nerd, Salma. But I understand where you're coming from now. Looking back as to what it was that we wanted to do when we were growing up, or the things we did to get to where we are now, it does make us reflect. So your inspiration then, you would say that it was the founder of Pakistan, right? Apologies, I can never pronounce his name correctly. So you'll just have to repeat that again from me, because I always remember the surname, but never the first name. But I take it then when you were growing up, there weren't that many female Muslim role models, shall we say?
I didn't know of anyone. And interestingly, you mentioned about nerds being bullied, but now I'm thinking actually, we were getting bullied anyway. So
Yeah, yeah, there
it's
is
only
that.
natural just to go and do something, quietly. So there were none actually. Thinking back, I can't remember ever. I mean, you didn't see many female lawyers in any event at that point. Now I'm showing my age, but many, many years ago, definitely didn't see anybody of color. Um, Certainly not any Pakistani lawyers in Bristol. Definitely not. Um, and I guess it was that thing that I couldn't see anybody that looked like me, but I'm not sure why he didn't put me off.
Yeah.
But it didn't. I was like, well, okay, if there aren't people doing this already, then it's
Why can't I?
why can't I? I was a bit of a rebel, to be honest, Zainab, growing up anyway. So although I was, you get bullied and all the rest of it, it gives you a bit of a backbone as well, doesn't it? Because
Mm.
kind of have to go out and fight for yourself in any event. And then I was a bit like kind of rebellious. If I was told you can't do this, and I was like, actually, no, you know what? You're telling me as a teacher, maybe I can't do this, but actually, you know what? Why can't I do this?
As long as it's within the realms of legal boundaries and Islam, there's nothing stopping it. And I completely hear you, because as my followers know, when I was growing up, all I ever got told was, don't bother doing anything, because I'm not going to amount to much. And it's that constant beratingness that was shoved down our throats effectively, that sometimes you start to think it and believe it, and it almost becomes your daily life, that there's nothing to aspire to. But you, alhamdulillah, accomplished that and more since then. And I don't want to skip ahead, because I want to kind of take the listeners on a journey here. So as you were growing up, not many role models, you decided, why can't you? So when you then did decide to go into law, what were your initial, if you can remember, what were your initial challenges first that you had to overcome? I mean, you did mention your teacher, so that was one of your first challenges, right?
I mean, yes. So there wasn't much encouragement from the teachers. It was the same. It was the same throughout, actually. Didn't really get much encouragement at college. Went on to like university. So I did actually do A level law as well. So I finished at school. I went on to do A level law at college at the time. And to be fair, I kind of picked it because at the time, people. I talk about this openly, that people from ethnic minorities would get pulled over, for example, all the time, and then their cars. And it was just, so annoying, just because you're driving around in a nice car. It's the assumption that, okay, you couldn't have got that by legitimate means.
Mm.
And when you get pulled over, you don't really know at the time. You're being young as well. You're kind of just quiet and you go along with, because you just have to believe what the authorities are telling you, that it's true.
Mm.
I think there was something in me that was just telling me, this is not right. Why are we being treated like this? Why are we being singled out? What about everybody else that drives on the roads or gets in trouble? Or why is it that we are kind of almost like targeted? So I think a lot of that. So I went away and I decided I'm going to study A level law at college, just to kind of get some knowledge, get some background, try and learn about my own rights, try and spread the information that I learn amongst my friends, my family, my community, to kind of help them. Because knowledge is key, isn't it? Knowledge is what you do. Knowledge is knowledge is, it helps you, navigate the system. It helps you understand where you sit and what you can and what you can't do, and whether or not you're being treated right, or whether or not you're not being treated right, and actually go out and get justice for yourself.
Penny's mightier
So
than the sword.
exactly, absolutely. So I studied A-level law, and I found as I was studying it, actually, I really enjoyed it. I really, really quite liked this, and I quite not liked the knowledge that I'd opened up, and I quite liked going out and sharing it with other people. Oh, guess what? I learned this today, and from there, my interest was spiked anyway. So I would go away and do additional reading on different things that I could go and share with that information with people. I volunteered for a little while as well at a Pakistani women's organization, just kind of helping ladies out there as well. And I thought, God, this is great. If I go out and learn this, I can really make a difference here on a local level, and set up some kind of support, or be there for those that actually need it.
So at a
Yeah,
very
so
young age, you were already thinking about how you can help the community and what you can be doing. So let's talk about when you did A-level law, and then you went into law. During the period from when you were growing up and when you started to go into law, either at college or A-level, did you ever see a shift in the narrative with the demographics of who was working in law? Was it still what it was when you were growing up, or had the doors slightly opened up a little bit more, where more female, especially more BAME or Muslim women were working in law, or was it still very much there's no one else?
So I didn't really see many more people, shall I say, that looked like me while I was at university. Certainly not in my law degree while I was doing that. Even when I'd finished university and I went out to start looking for training contracts, again, locally, there was just no luck at all. I went away and paralegaled for a while, and I remember being told I remember actually applying for the training contract, and while I was paralegaling, I was then pulled aside and I was actually spoken to and told that actually, if you do want to do law and you're really serious about it, you may wish to consider changing how you look or what you wear. You might want to consider, at the time, I still have my nose stud, but you might want to consider taking your nose stud out. You may wish to consider maybe dressing a bit more in Western clothing, because if you look like that and you dress like that, you're not going to make it in law. It's just not going to happen for you. And for many, many years, I really resented the person that said all of this to me, because I just thought, why, rather than helping to change the system, why, there was this expectation that if I wanted to become a lawyer, that I had to pretty much change, everything about myself to fit in to what it's perceived that a lawyer must look like. Now, with the benefit of experience, I look back and I realize that actually this person was probably in their own way trying to help me. But that's not how I perceived it for many, many years. It's not. But yeah, perhaps that is what they were trying to do, because I expect it was coming from a good place, but I certainly didn't take it that way. I then realised that I wasn't really going to make it in law if I stayed in the southwest of England, because there was nobody that looked like me. The opportunities weren't just there for me. I was kind of immediately dismissed when you can see when people look at you and in their eyes, like you would walk in and the light would kind of just go out. We're like, all right, okay, she's just here for an interview, not going to be successful. I struggled for many years. I sent out hundreds. People talk about sending out hundreds of applications. No joke, you really do. Hundreds and hundreds of applications for training contracts after university. And I think it must be about year 3 or perhaps even 4. I thought, okay, this is just really not going to happen for me. It's just not going to happen. And then at that point, one of somebody I should know back at university called me and said, actually, there's an opportunity here in London if you would like to take it, starting off as a paralegal with a view to getting a training contract. So you might want to come down and maybe interview. And I thought, okay, actually, let's go and do this then. And I was offered the position. And that's how I got my training contract in the end. But it was literally at the point of I had decided it wasn't working, and I'm not getting a training contract. It's just not going to happen for me. But alhamdulillah.
So your barriers were not your academics or, the very fact that there's not enough positions out there. Yours was more along the lines of what you look like, what your ethnicity is, and so on. And interestingly, you say that about this person. I recall, and this has stuck with me for a very long time. And I'm very principled in certain places. Okay, when I know I have not done anything wrong Islamically or legally, it's very hard for me to break my stance on something when I made a decision. And when I was as a uni student, now bearing in mind I went to university when I was in my late 20s, married, 4 children, so I was already very much mature than the average 28-year-olds of that time. Anyway, we had a very huge event in Birmingham. I'm not going to mention the law firm. To this day, I've never mentioned the law firm because I've heard that their approach and their behavior has changed. So I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt. But we went to this event, and back then my name used to be Zainab, and I used to wear a hijab and everything. And I used to be, so I qualified as an immigration advisor in my own standing, and I was regulated by the Home Office's department, which is Office of Immigration Service Commissioners, OISC. Now, I did that independently of my own right before I even went uni, and I'd been running the firm for several years now. So I had my CV and everything in my bag with me, just on the off chance that in this event, we're networking and somebody might ask me for my CV. Anyway, I'm in at this circle. I've got my orange juice in my hand, and it was a bunch of middle-aged Caucasian men. And they're all going around in the circle asking everybody who they are. And I was the only Asian in that room, let alone in that circle. And they said, they asked me who I was, where I've come from. And then they said, oh, so what kind of legal experience do I have? And I went, immigration. And they said, oh, so you're one of them who lets everybody in. That was the first one. So I didn't say anything.
That's awful.
Yep. And I didn't say anything. And then the second thing they said to me was, oh, so what's your name again? I went, Zainab Patel. So he goes, okay, well, why don't you change your name to Jenny right now, and I'll give you a training contract? And I said, excuse me? And he goes, change your name to Jenny Patel, and I'll give you the training contract. And I very casually put down my orange juice, and without even saying bye to anyone, I walked straight out. And I've never looked back at that firm again. And it took me a very long time to get my training contract. But when I did, and as you know, Salma, because you and I are both connected on LinkedIn, I trend just as much as you trend as well, right? And there was a recruiter who approached me for this law firm. So they headhunted me and said, we want you, they wanted me to join. And I turned around and said to the recruiter, with respect, no thank you. And I didn't divulge it at first, but the recruiter, she was like, look, it's confidential. So I told her, I said, why would I work for a firm that behaved in that manner? She goes, oh, but they're not like that anymore. I said, well, good for them. But I don't want to work for them anymore, because it really put me off. It really put me off. So to me, I hear and see exactly what you are feeling and what you've gone through. But what I like about you, and this is something that my listeners are going to learn in the next segment of the show, is what you actually did to break that stereotype. And I'm referring to the westernized clothing element. So I really do want to discuss that, because to me, that's a huge glass ceiling shattered type of situation where you see it in your employment contracts. You see it talked about, smart casual. You got to come in your suit, your ties. You got to come in your long skirts and so on. But you've broken that, because you've actually gone and done something completely different. You've done the opposite, of which not a lot of us, myself included, would have the nerve to do. And I'm quite gutsy. I ride a motorbike, right? So I am quite gutsy, but I don't think that's something I could do. And I really do want to discuss that. So you got your training contract, right? And you were filling in whatever you needed to do. When did you decide that you were not going to conform to the social norms or the workplace norms of dressing westernized, and you were going to dress the way you wanted to in accordance with our Islamic modesty and so on?
So I think I've spoken about this on LinkedIn on various occasions as well. So at the time, and I admit this, that I did conform for a while to the Western. Well, I mean, I say Western clothing, but still modest clothing, shall we say? And I trained and I qualified, And then I basically, it must have been maybe maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I think now. I kind of, it's really weird. Like I kind of just woke up one day and I was like, you know, I'm not happy. I'm not happy pretending to be somebody that I'm actually not. I'm not happy going out and, like not dressing how I want to dress, or being myself, or being true to my values. Or, why should we have to do this? Why is it that the way that we wear, for example, if I want to go out in shalwar kameez, there's nothing wrong with that. That's still smart clothing. Um, or I perceive it to be smart clothing. If I want to go to an event, if I wear an Asian outfit, I mean, I deem that to be very appropriate. I think it's a very elegant outfit for a dinner or an awards night, or, wherever I'm going. I don't see why should we make ourselves smaller to fit in?
Mm.
And I just thought, I'm just not, I've tried so hard for so long to actually fit in to what people, what they say a lawyer should look like. But is that what it's all about?
Mm.
You know, why do we have to fit in? What about making space for other people, for everyone to be who they want to be? How we dress and what we look like doesn't affect the advice that we give, or the knowledge that we have, or our qualifications. We've earned the right to be here. We've worked hard to be where we are. We're not being disrespectful. We're not dressing, in, you know,
Provocatively.
exactly,
Mm.
as far as I'm concerned, we're dressing well. They're nice clothes. Um, and if we and it's just, I don't know, I think I just kind of felt I'm kind of done,
Mm.
trying to fit in. It's so exhausting as well. It just takes it out of you, doesn't it?
Mm.
This constant trying to fit in, trying to be like the others, trying to be, the perception of normal. Um, but we are normal,
Mm.
you know?
We are our
Um,
normal.
so
Everyone's got their own normal, and we are our own normal.
exactly.
Mm.
So admittedly, I went to the managing partner of the law firm I was working to at the time, and I sat him down and I said, "Do you know what? I want to have a very open conversation with you. I want to be me. I want to, be able to wear, I want to wear my headscarf freely. I want to wear my clothing, but." I'm very conscious about the fact that some people might not like this and some clients might not like this. And he actually said to me, he goes, well, if they don't, then we are not the firm for them.
So you had the backing of your managing director.
I did at the time. I mean, I was very lucky because I had he was, we'd had various conversations over the years, basically, about religion, about, being an ethnic minority in the firm, about things that perhaps the firm could do to be a bit more inclusive. So I guess I was kind of lucky because I'd had these kind of dialogues before. I was also, I was also very worried that is this going to hold me back from being promoted to partner or anything like that,
Mm.
because you've worked so hard, haven't you?
Mm.
Um, but when he said this to me, I thought, okay, let's do this and see what happens. So I did. And obviously there were questions. There were some people that were very, inquisitive about it. There were some people that would have spoken to me previously, but then stopped speaking to me. You go in one day and everyone's talking to you. You go in the next day with a headscarf on, and people are a bit like, "What's going on here?" It was really, it's all a bit unsettling, I guess. Um, but I thought, you know what, I'm just kind of done just hiding. Um, and what I realized is that actually putting on the headscarf, it just kind of it opened up a lot of conversations with lots of different people that I wouldn't have ordinarily maybe even spoken to.
In a good
But
way?
in a good way. I had the good interactions. I also did have the bad interactions as well. Let's be
Mm.
honest about this. It's not all, you do this and it's not all just wonderful, is it?
Mm.
So yeah, I had a lot of I won't take it away from the good people that I had a lot of really good interactions. People would ask, they asked about, they're like, oh, this is really nice. I had some clients come in and say, oh, that's a really nice color. I like how you matched it to your outfit. Um, And then I obviously had on the other side, some people who were very, yeah, okay, we don't want to speak to you now.
Because you're not fitting into their into their
No,
parameters, isn't it? That's what it comes
absolutely.
down to.
And that's absolutely fine. If you don't want to speak to me, that's fine. That's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing. And then the clothing, I tell you, I'll be honest, like shalwar kameez, it's just, when it's in the summer and it's so hot, is there anything that's more comfortable than shalwar kameez, in my opinion? Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to go to the office. I'll wear my shalwar kameez. And again, there's, questions and curiosity and things like this. Um, and, some people deem it as appropriate, some people don't. But I kind of just decided, this is who I am.
Well,
This is what I will wear. This is what I'm comfortable in. And I don't deem what I'm wearing as, inappropriate clothing for the office.
no, I mean, I've
Um,
seen your outfits when you post on LinkedIn, and alhamdulillah, they are absolutely gorgeous. And, they're beautiful, they're professional in my eyes, and they're modest as well. So, you're living within the parameters of what Islam says, and, there's nothing, like I said, wrong with that. It's just our social and cultural norms. So, alhamdulillah, you went past that. I take it even now in 2025, you might meet the odd few people who will probably take a double look at you when you're walking down the street every now and then. But your courage, it's quite inspiring. Your courage is very much inspiring, because sometimes, I mean, take for example in Eid sometimes, or birthdays or weddings, I've had to run in to say Tesco to grab something last minute. And we're wearing our Indian outfits, right? It's embarrassing because people just stand and gawk at you, because, of course, our Asian clothing, like most cultural clothing, is quite extravagant, colourful, you know, uh, how's it called?
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
That's
got
what it
loads of,
is. It's lovely.
that's
It's
it.
lovely,
Sparkles.
beautiful
That's
clothing.
it. Exactly. And I've been on the end of where people have just literally stopped and stared, and it can be embarrassing, especially when I've got my 16-year-old with me, because then she'll be like, oh, God, mum, cringe, and she'll come out with all of those words. But I've literally gone out of my way when I see other ladies walk into various shops where you can tell they're feeling embarrassing, and I've gone up to them to say, your outfit is absolutely stunning, you look amazing today, just to give them that little bit of it's okay, that little bit of encouragement, because we don't know what they're going through, we don't know what they're feeling. So I just want to give a quick reminder to the audience, and then I do have a question that's come up as well that I want to ask. So just a reminder to the listeners that you tuned into Ramadan FM on 87.7 and DAB 9B. If you have a question or any comments, studio line is 0116 4822 and to text or WhatsApp, it's 077 488 55055. I'm here with Salma Maqsood, who is a lawyer and a partner in a law firm, and all of the challenges she's overcome to be exactly who she wants to be without conforming to someone else's narrative. So, Salma, a question that I've had directly on my WhatsApp is, first of all, they want to remain anonymous. So they've said, thank you so much for being an inspiration to us younger generation. Do you have any advice if I wanted to change the way I dress at work, instead of wearing trousers and shirts, or skirts and shirts, and I wanted to wear my Indian clothes? How would I best approach this when we've never had a conversation in the firm?
I would start with having a conversation. I think is I always think that these conversations, you're really worried about having them, but once you've actually had them, I in my experience, I feel like a burden has just come off of you. It's like this weight has been lifted from your shoulders, because the minute you start talking about it and others start to listen, then that's it. You immediately started. You've started a change. You've lit that spark. And it's or what do they call it? The ripple effect. You've thrown a stone in the river, and now you can watch the ripples go. Throughout. So, and it's not just going to help you. And I also find that it's really important to have that conversation in any event, to start off with, maybe with your immediate supervisor, just to see, oh, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I'm assuming it's going to be fine, but I just thought I would run it past you, and whether you had any thoughts or anything like that, and what support you can offer me. And that's probably how I would phrase it. Because you're not actually asking for permission. What you want to know is, are you an inclusive firm, and what support will you offer me when I make this change?
Mm. It also begs the question, doesn't it? Is there any discrimination, underlying workplace discrimination, by denying someone who wants to wear their Asian attire? I mean, I'll be honest with you, if I was to walk into my firm today and say to them, or tomorrow, shall we say, the day's ended, that I want to wear Asian clothes, I have no doubt they'll have no issues, because, like you said, with what you mentioned earlier, how we dress and how we look bears no reflection or effect on the qualifications that we have and the advice that we give, or the work that we carry out. You know, qualifications are qualifications. The way we dress and look are different. It's no different than, say, a goth or someone walking in with, you know, the collars around their necks and, you know, the leather gloves and whatever it is that they want to wear. Of course, you might not want to go in front of a client, depending upon what your client's going to be like. There's those questions. I suppose the firm itself, so to Anon who messaged, I guess it comes down to maybe what kind of relationship you have with your immediate supervisor, and whether you're on a really good footing with them, that you want to approach them. If not, and you work in, say, a bigger firm or a bigger company, you might want to go to your HR without upsetting your immediate supervisor. They might think you've gone over their head, but certainly some firms, one or two that I worked for in the past, you'd have to go to HR. You know, in the first instance, that was the system there. So, you know, think about who it is that you need to approach first, and then approach them, have that frank conversation, but be ready for them to maybe think about it or say no. Don't be immediately disappointed. Give them an opportunity, because it is something that they're probably not used to. Would you agree to that, Salma?
I would, and I'd also probably reach out. If you're working in a larger firm, there are normally networks, like diversity networks. I'd probably also reach out to somebody in on the networks as well, and just ask them their advice as well. What do they think? How you should best approach it?
Mm.
Do you think, or who the best person to have a conversation with? I would definitely seek out guidance there. It's always about having conversations with people, and also trying to see who is your ally and who isn't. One thing I will say is that if you're early on in your career, and if you are, like, for example, in the middle of a training contract, I don't know, you might want to wait until you've qualified or finished your training contract
Yeah,
before raising a question like this,
yeah.
because, at the end of the day, at that point, there is a real focus on qualifying. But I will say that the kind of firm that you work at, you should be picky.
Mm.
You should, I mean, I learned that very late in life, but I do think it really matters to work at a firm that works for you.
Yeah. And
Um,
I always say this to the students that I mentor, that the interview that you go to, the interview is not just about the employer interviewing you. It's your opportunity to also interview the employer. So when you get the opportunity to ask questions at the end, make sure you ask them, because that's somewhere you're going to be spending, 7.5, 8 hours a day, every single day, depending upon what your working hours are. We spend more time at work than we do at home in any given week. So you need to be comfortable, right? So we've got about 11 minutes on the clock, Salma, and there's, you know, quite a few to cover. This brings us neatly and nicely on to your role as, I mean, it's up to you whether you want to talk about your vice presidency role at Bristol Society, Law Society, or your social and mobility ambassador work that you do at the Law Society. I'll let you take the pick as to what it is that you actually do in terms of either or. Which one do you want to pick?
let's do the social mobility ambassador role, because I
Okay.
quite like that role.
Fantastic.
Um,
So let's first explain what social and mobility means and what an ambassador does. Can we touch that?
yeah, of course. So social mobility, oh, well, now I'm thinking about the actual definition of it, but what the role actually involves,
Sure.
it's showing that people from different backgrounds, and from different, even, socioeconomic backgrounds, that if they persevere, they can make it, in their chosen career, and this one just being law. So I'm kind of like an ambassador for that, to show people that, effectively, if I can make it, so can you. And lawyers, they don't all look the same.
Mm.
Lawyers are supposed to look different. And in fact, it's good that we do, because, we should be as lawyers, we should be representative of the people that we serve. So that's why it's important to have that diversity. What does the role involve? What I love about this role is it gives me opportunities to go out and speak to schools about diversity, to inspire the next generation of lawyers, to mentor aspiring lawyers, to help out even lawyers that have already qualified, but they're looking to progress in their career, maybe to an associate level or a senior associate or to a partner level, that kind of mentoring. One of my favorite things about being a social mobility ambassador is the diversity access scheme that the Law Society offer. And that's like, I think it's a number of fully paid for either SQE or it used to be back in the days LPC positions with a guaranteed training contract at the end of it.
Something that wasn't around, several years ago. I can hear, and obviously I'm looking at you as well through the camera, I can hear and see the passion reverberating from your voice when you're just talking about this role. Clearly this is something that not only do you enjoy, but you are passionate about. And from what I can see, and well, the fact that I mentor a lot of students, it's something that's very much needed, because I'm going to say this next word very carefully, but this is how I do feel. The legal field in itself is saturated with law graduates. There's a lot of law graduates and not enough roles to go around. So everyone is fighting and pinching for that next role where it takes them to what their goal is. For many people, it's to qualify as a solicitor. For others, it's to become a partner. And for some other people, it's just for them to, say, go into compliance. Whatever their goal is, it's extremely hard to get into law because of the amount of graduates compared to the roles. And then on top, we've got additional challenges on top. So having something like this, having someone like you, Salma, being there to be that guidance, hats off to all the work that you do. And clearly your passion shows it. Would you, I'm not going to start asking you for stats or anything like that, but how long have you been doing this role now?
I've been doing the social mobility ambassador role for, I want to say, about 5 years now.
So in your 5 years then, would you say you've helped hundreds, thousands of students or people who've needed this access and this, mentoring and so on?
Probably not thousands, but I would think perhaps hundreds.
Okay.
I'm sure you've done the same though, Zainab, because I see all the good work that you do as well.
Yeah. Well, it's very much needed, Salma. I mean, like I said to you, there wasn't much support when I was in my late 20s. There wasn't much support around. And, it was either you had connections in the field and you walked straight into a training contract, or you fit their narrative, which was, I don't really want to say it on radio, but there is that perception of tall, blonde and skinny, because there was a lot of that. And, I was completely the opposite. I was short, Asian, chubby. I did not fit their narrative in one, iota of it. And no matter how much experience I had, legal and non-legal, I really did struggle to get that training contract. So all the mentoring that I do, and it's a way of me showing the younger generation out there, it's okay. It's okay to have challenges, because you are going to. Life is never easy. No one said it was going to be easy. It's okay to have those challenges, but it's what you do, how you get up, brush yourself off, and what you do next that counts. And that's why, what you do, what others do, what I do, it's important that we access as many students as we can, but also we show them. Like I said to you, I don't have the guts to go to work in Asian clothing, Indian clothing. That's because for me, it's going to be a case of, well, I love wearing my boots, right? And boots don't really match an Asian outfit. So for me, it's going to be, well, what kind of footwear am I going to wear? And there's those kind of challenges. But for me,
I wear my Converses.
There you go, right? So for me, but I'm gutsy in other areas where I ride the motorbike, and I'm constantly showing the female generation out there that there's nothing wrong with motorbiking. There's nothing wrong with accomplishing what you need to accomplish, whatever your goal is. And it's the reason why I asked you about who your role model was growing up is because what I wanted to show the listeners is if you don't have a role model or you don't have someone who's done something in the area you want to, why don't you go be that person? Why don't you be the first? Why don't you be the change for the change that you want? And then you can then be that inspiration for the next person coming in. And as I've been talking to you, Salma, I don't know if you realised or if you've ever reflected on it, you didn't have that role model when you were growing up, like a female BAME, role model. But I can tell you one thing now, Salma, you are certainly that role model for those people who are up and coming now. And even those who don't want to be in the legal field, but who are working in other professional sectors where there are these stereotypes or these, norms where you have to wear Indian clothes, you have to wear, westernized clothes, and you have to do X, Y, Z, You are that inspiration, you are that role model. So whilst you didn't have anyone, Salma, you can bask in that glory that you are certainly that role model for someone else.
And you too, Zainab, I have to say, everything you say to me right now, right back at you.
So much. Before we say the next thing, there's something that's come up on my screen. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Quran 13:11. Jazakallah for that. So yes, apologies for interrupting you there, Salma. We have about 4 minutes on the clock. Is there something else that you wanted to cover before I ask my next question?
Ask away then.
So I normally like to kind of end the show with what advice to people, what golden nuggets or top tips can you give to those who are listening today, in anything that you feel that you've had to learn the hard way or the easy way, what advice can you give to those who are listening?
Don't be afraid of hearing the answer no. Don't let that stop you from asking the question. I've always been afraid of, if I ask somebody for help or if I send them a message, they're going to come back and say no to me. And there will be people that say no, but there will also be people that will say yes, and they will help you. Don't be afraid to communicate. Ask, even ask questions, even at work. Ask, I use LinkedIn. People send me messages on LinkedIn all the time to ask me questions. Do you mind having a coffee, a Teams call? Do that. One of the things that I learned very, very late in my life is about networking. And networking can be in any situation where you are comfortable to network. It doesn't have to be like a work networking. If you can go out and do that and build your own network of professionals, you should do that. And that just brings so much value. It will bring value to when you need help with something and can immediately think, oh, actually, I know someone who can help with this. Or when they might need you to come in and step in and help them with something. So it kind of works two ways. So I do think that networking, it is, I know you hear it a lot, but it is just generally important. And, again, you can find your own place to network. Or your own idea. It doesn't have to be, you can create the kind of network that you want with your people. And I always think it's really, really important to have allies, and not just allies, but a good circle of friends, a support system. You always need a support, even if it's just 3 people. Just people that when you are feeling down, they can tell you how amazing you are, because each of us are amazing in our own way. Each of us are unique. Each of us have something to bring to the table. And you said this earlier, Zainab, but I just honestly don't think that anybody should be afraid of being the first. Be the first. Go out there and just do it. Don't let anything stop you. Inshallah, just put your faith in Allah. This is massive for me, massively brought around my change about 7 years ago. You put your faith in Allah, you put him first, and you will, inshallah, succeed. Your success might not maybe look like what you set out for it to look like, but it will be success.
Absolutely. If it's not good for you, then Allah won't give it you, because he knows best, right? If it's meant to be, it's going to happen. And just because it doesn't happen now doesn't mean it's going to happen, or it's not going to happen at a later time, right?
Honestly, it's really true.
Brilliant. Well, Jazakallah so much, Salma. We have about 50 seconds left on the clock. So I do just want to say Jazakallah so much for being my guest on tonight's show. And to everyone who's tuned in, you're tuned in to Ramadan FM 87.7 with your host Zainab Zaeem on her show Breaking Stereotypes, and her guest Salma Maqsood, who honestly for me is a huge inspiration, and I really look forward to her posts on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn and you know, either you're familiar with LinkedIn or you want to start on LinkedIn, follow Salma, see what she posts, and she is honestly a completely breaking stereotypes type of person.
You're embarrassing me now.
No, I'm not. So much, it's so much, it's so much, it's so much, it's so much, it's